So we're here today because something's happening, or something happened, and it will happen, I suppose. So I have, over the past, I don't know, few years, been working on a project, and it's turned into a thing. And that thing happens to be a course that covers the topic of an introduction to cryptocurrency that is meant to bring somebody from basically no or very little level of knowledge about the topic of cryptocurrency to a level of literacy where they can understand it, they know the origins, they know why it's in place, and they understand what is necessary to do to find valuable information. And so I thought one interesting thing we could do to kind of drum up some interest in this topic is that, well, first of all, I'm going to be giving a few different lectures in some different finance courses. One is going to be coming up fairly soon at the Catalyst campus for EWU, and then they're going to have one on the main campus of Eastern, and then maybe another one. I think there was a Rockwood clinic mentioned in there somewhere. So there's definitely some interest among the faculty and the community. But I also figured this would be another venue we could use to kind of get the word out there. And cryptocurrency is a very difficult topic to cover because there is a lot of baggage that comes along with it. A lot of it is earned, and a lot of it is not quite earned as one would think. But the difficult part is that there really isn't a way to learn about it other than jumping in feet first and getting battered and bloodied. At least that's how it has been in my experience, in our experience. The point is to change that.
Yeah, I suppose the hope is to make it a little less costly to become literate in the subject.
Yeah.
Because, oh dear, has it been costly in the past?
It's been costly to you, to me, to, many industries of all different types, because of all the different places that cryptocurrency touches. But I figured what would be a good way to start out would be by talking about the whole experience of coming into cryptocurrency. Now, in the course, I go through quite a bit of the history of currency and where Bitcoin and cryptography originated from. But the important thing to understand is that Bitcoin, which is the original, well, it's the first mm, widely adopted and successful cryptocurrency. It wasn't necessarily the first. I think like eCash or something like that happened before Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is what really took hold. And it came into being after.
Entropia dollars.
Yeah, right. It came into being after the 2008 housing market crash. And then whoever Satoshi is, because nobody still knows, even if people claim they know, they don't know. Nobody knows who the Satoshi is. But he understood the fundamental flaw that existed within the financial system and how manipulatable it was. And so his goal was to create a currency or an asset class that was incorruptible, and it had to be secure as well. And that's what brought, if you go read the white paper, that's essentially the I don't know, was it the ethos that he stood behind, and that's how Bitcoin got started, roughly around the later part of 2009.
And I think that's really the divide that is worth sort of indicating is that the idea with creating cryptocurrencies was that the currency itself could be incorruptible, as you say. But a lot of people will look askance at that statement and say, but the cryptocurrency market is absolutely rife with scams and corruption. And the thing about it is that human beings are not incorruptible.
Correct.
The currency is, though.
Right.
And you might, I think that a reasonable question that somebody might ask then is, well, okay, if cryptocurrency is incorruptible and it's people who are corruptible, then is there fundamentally a problem with fiat currency?
I would say yes.
Is it the fiat currency that is providing the corruption that we're having trouble with in the modern day economy, or is it the people, or is it both? And can you point to the problems with fiat currency that are contributing that maybe you would argue that cryptocurrency would solve.
Right. Well, the problem with many different fiat currencies, and they're pretty much any government around the world issues its own type or uses a commonly used type. I guess in the case of the European Union and whatnot, they use a common currency there, is that it is specifically controlled by a very small group of people who make up the rules as they go along, and they determine how much money there will be generated and how much money will be spent without any input from anyone else. And so the rules are all made up as they go along, and it tends to favor those in power.
So what you're saying is that the problem with fiat currencies isn't the currency itself, but rather the structure by which it is managed,
Yes.
which is meaning that the corruptibility of people is contributing not to the corrupt ways in which the currency is used, but rather the corrupt ways in which the currency's features are managed, right? Which cryptocurrency is still technically like
That there's an
vulnerable
independence
to, though. And I've witnessed situations where
Sure.
in which cryptocurrency has succumbed to these vulnerabilities because corrupt people can design coins that are intentionally have vulnerabilities that can be exploited, or will create currencies that designed to fail in a way that is advantageous to its creator,
Correct.
and things like that. Now, there are coins that have been created and established that it's obvious that that hasn't happened. And so the argument for becoming crypto literate is in your ability to identify those coins, those chains, those projects, whatever it is you're looking at, that are not that way, that are not designed to fail for someone's gain, and would allow you to operate in a sort of a safe currency. Whether or not the people who are using that currency are using it for nefarious means that's never going to change. People will
Yeah.
use money for corrupt stuff
They've been using normal
forever
fiat.
because people
Yeah, absolutely.
people are gonna be people, and obviously there are ways, there are situations where people will be less inclined to commit crimes, but there are some arguments that the cryptocurrency enables crime in ways that traditional fiat currency does not. And I've heard this said a lot, and I fail to follow the math on that in some ways, right? Because while I can understand that for a lot of people, the initial draw of cryptocurrency was the anonymity of how you could operate with it. Because when you're using a credit card, your name is on the credit card. So when you pay for something with the credit card, your name is logged with that vendor, with that payment processor, that you were the one who purchased this. But cash, I mean, unless they're taking your fingerprints off the bills, you can spend cash for crime all you want. Cryptocurrencies, they will log every single time. The blocks will log every single exchange of coins, if I'm understanding that
Yeah,
correctly.
correct. Yes.
The only issue is that it will log the wallet that received those coins and that sent those coins. The wallet will not necessarily be associated with your identity unless that wallet is registered with a currency exchange that has know your customer policies.
Correct.
And then your identity is linked with that wallet. And then you are not capable of committing crimes with that money. So it's like, it is not that crypto is inherently more crime forward or something. It's that the structures, the structures that enable the committing of crimes with it, or that would prevent the committing of crimes with it, are less developed just because it is a young technology. In the same way that cash is a fundamentally young technology compared to credit and digital use of digital fiat.
Right.
Like, at least that's been my read on it, which is that the math doesn't math when people say that crypto is inherently a crime waiting to happen.
Right. It's definitely it's hard to peg it as anonymous for those reasons, but also in the case of, because you can track where every single unit of that crypto goes and then what it gets used for,
Right.
then you can pretty closely deduce who is originating those actions and follow that to their logical ends. It's actually made it so cryptocurrency is not preferred by criminals simply because it cannot be made anonymous for the most part. There are some privacy coins out there, but the liquidity isn't there to make them very usable. If
If
criminals,
someone's really
right.
seriously determined to dig, they can find out.
Yeah, there's
Um,
specific companies out there whose entire platform is doing these kinds of traces, helping law enforcement and finding criminal activity. There's famous, don't want to say famous, but there's well-known accounts on Twitter whose goal is to root out crime and scam
yeah.
artists and these kinds of things. And the whole reason they're able to do it is because they can follow everything.
It's like in today's internet, I would never feel if I was a hostage taker, I would never feel safe providing a proof of life photograph with Rainbolt in the world. You know what I mean? Like I would never feel like that was an option because there are people out there with such incredible geoguesser skills
Hmm.
that they would know exactly where I was.
Yeah.
Like you can't no you cannot use digital means for crime and expect it to go well if people are really paying attention,
Yeah.
and people are.
And it is forever. When it is on the blockchain, it is forever. It does not go anywhere. It you have written it to the code of the blockchain.
Right. And an important thing to bear in mind, and this argument has some holes in it and I'll address them, but when something new is invented, human beings have two immediate, well, they have three immediate impulses. I'll mention two of them though. One of them is, can we use it to make money? Be that through crime or upstanding business models or whatever. And the other one is, can we use it to make weapons? The
Mhm,
other one we won't discuss. But like, can this be used for military? Can this be used for monetary?
mhm.
Right? Are two really powerful technological impulses, and that's kind of the thing that's driven a lot of history. Is like technological advancements, and then the colonizations and atrocities that have come as a result of that. And so it's like when we create something like cryptocurrency, people are going to look at that and think, well, we can't really use it for weapons, but we could absolutely weaponize it for money.
It is a different it can be used as a weapon, for sure, just not in a physically destructive sense.
Right. I mean, you can weaponize economy,
Sure.
to be clear, but anyway, the point being that it's not like primarily of military importance, and so it becomes of monetary importance. And the fact that, I mean, it's a currency technology, so it's obviously of monetary importance. So people are going to try and find any way they can to get ahead with it. And given that it was sort of an unregulated wild west of a new technology, it's a bit of a mosh pit. The same thing has been going on with AI, and that's a huge can of worms, where you have a new-ish application of artificial intelligence, and it's kind of an or it's been an unregulated Wild West, and it somewhat remains that way. And so you have these AI companies committing crime hand over fist in an effort to make money in the future with this. And like, it's not even remotely subtle. They're not pretending they're not doing it. They're not subtle about it. They're just stealing stuff. So these companies, artificial intelligence as a technology is not bad. Using it the way that companies are looking to use it right now may be an issue, but there are incredibly beneficial applications of machine learning, and we've been using them in the past, and we're using them more so now that we have this really like kind of bloody ugly thing going on with the large language models
Mhm.
that are being really pushed to the forefront. And I think I have my feelings about that. I mean, I'm trained as an artist, so like I have a different take on it than other people. But I think that large language models are maybe not the best application of artificial intelligence. But if you look at some of the stuff that artificial intelligence is capable of contributing to the medical community and to the scientific community and to video games, even, but not art, in video games necessarily. We can use this in ethical ways. Machine learning is very powerful. Large language models and models that scrub art and put artists out of jobs, not what not what I'm talking about here. But there are really positive applications for the technology, and we will make strides even out of this kind of ugly war we're fighting with some of these companies who are doing a lot of unethical stuff. So it's the same kind of thing going on with crypto. You get a new step forward in a technology, and people will abuse it because everybody, particularly, this is very like a very common attitude in a lot of places in the world, but it's very pronounced in the West, in America particularly. We have an attitude here that is a very kind of claw and scrape to the top. It's like, how can I get myself ahead? How can I pull myself up out of the mud? If I see a way to do that, I'll step on someone to do it. That attitude is very real, even for people who would like to believe that they wouldn't do that. There's still a real temptation. There's
Well,
still real temptation to try to relieve the pain of fearing where where your next meal might come from or whatever. And that's very understandable. So when technologies enable potential ways out for people, they'll abuse them. And so cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence both accrue a lot of bad name over time with the ways that people are inclined to use new technologies. And sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better. There are some other technologies that I'm sure we could think of if we took the time to kind of catalog through them, that it would be much less detrimental. But these are some really big ones that have led to some catastrophic losses for people monetarily, and a lot of lost jobs that you'll get with AI. And then also some really incredible come-ups for some people who have gotten really lucky investing in Bitcoin early, or have gotten really lucky innovating in some way with artificial intelligence. I have heard some stories that have made me thoroughly ill about people who have had like ChatGPT sort of like set up a ChatGPT farm to create like 300 short novels and then farm them out on Amazon Books
oh
and make a
God,
whole bunch of
yeah.
money. And that to me makes me feel ill because I have standards. But that person was able to take advantage of a technological situation and a lack of regulation, and kind of, I might see it as cheat their way to the top, but they might see it as set themselves up to not have to worry where their next meal is coming from.
There is that definite imbalance, but a lot of this is in hindsight, though, because
Yes.
if we're going back to when Bitcoin first came out, nobody really knew what to use it for, or even how to get it. So at the very beginning, it
Do I
was
have to go to a kiosk? I think that was a thing back in the day.
no,
You had to
well,
go
it
to like a
still
kiosk
is.
with
No,
a
it's
USB.
oh no, it's crazier than that. So, I mean, back in the day, the only way to make Bitcoin, I mean, really, the only way to make Bitcoin was to mine it. And it started out just on your average consumer computer. And as we know now, you need a lot more than just a consumer computer to be able to mine Bitcoin, because that difficulty level has shot up to the moon, to where there's entire industries based around making the ASICs that go out and mine Bitcoin. So I mean, that was the only way you could originate Bitcoin. But then, like, who's gonna who's gonna be willing to accept it? And then
Can I
how
just
would
point out,
sure
thinking
go ahead.
about the fact that there are massive warehouses that mine Bitcoin, that this is the strangest video game, the strangest and most expensive video game anyone has ever created.
Yes,
This is
it
the weirdest scavenger hunt, and it uses so much electricity.
not as much as you would think, and they're
Well, not
actually
anymore,
yeah,
but
it took a while to get around to the ethical use of electricity, which I covered in my class, but going back, people
yeah, I
didn't
think that
know
was a big thing with ETH 2.0 actually,
yeah,
was
that's
the
why they
power
switched
consumption.
yeah, that's why they switched over to proof of stake instead of proof of work, which is
Right.
what Bitcoin is. So the whole thing was, how do you even get it? And that's the wallet at the time was the mining software. So if you had a wallet, you would not only be storing all of the transactions of the Bitcoin network on your wallet, you would also be able to mine through the wallet as well. So it was kind of, it played two two parts. It was a two-part thing together. And then you could either transfer it to somebody else if they had a wallet, or if you wanted to, but like if you wanted to buy some like with cash, there was no way to do that. And so there's this website that somebody came up with called Local Bitcoins. And what you would do is you would
Hot
find
Bitcoins in your area.
exactly. Find somebody in your area that had Bitcoin, and you'd go and physically meet up with them to exchange cash and then have them transfer the Bitcoin into your wallet. I mean, you don't need a USB thing or anything. You could just give them your address, and you hopefully they wouldn't just run off with your cash, because I think that was probably a thing for a while too.
Yeah, what a horrifying system.
I know.
My God.
That was how it started, you know? Then things got a little bit
And we think
better.
it's bad now.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
it was Wild West back then. And so then it evolved to an actual website exchange. You remember Mount Gox, right?
I don't.
Oh, you don't remember Mount?
No,
This is
no,
before your time.
way before my
So
time.
yeah, this is like 2013, 2014.
To be sure, if you want a good metric on my time, Kraken was like waning in usage by the time I was looking into things. Like Kraken was kind of the big name that had faded into the past
Right.
when I got into all of this.
But I mean, it's still around.
It's still around, but it's no longer like the
Yeah.
fish, right?
Yeah. That's definitely been eclipsed by Coinbase and Binance.
Coinbase
a
and
few others.
Binance,
Yeah.
for sure, have taken over what Kraken it used to be so great. you
Yeah.
know?
So Mt. Gox was the original exchange, and it used to be a Magic the Gathering exchange, Mt. Gox, right?
Jesus.
That's what it was.
God,
And it was located in Japan.
what a pivot.
Yeah, and then so this guy who was in charge of that decided to start allowing for Bitcoin exchange, and they figured out a way to on ramp some people through Japan, and then that's how it got started. And then suddenly more exchanges started popping up, some in the US, probably something in China, and then because it was still such an unstable economy, there was a huge difference in price ranges in Bitcoin depending on where you lived. So this is where arbitrage came in. And so if you, let's say, lived in America and you had a lower price for Bitcoin than in, say,
And that
Japan.
would have just been because of like physical local scarcity.
Yeah, exactly. And this is
Oh my
is
God.
how a lot of people actually got super wealthy on Bitcoin. They'd buy it cheap in one location, they'd transfer it to another exchange, they'd sell it for that local currency, and then trade that local currency back in the United States dollar, and then
Buying cheap wheat in the Midwestern United States with Bitcoin,
yeah,
taking it
yeah.
to places like Japan.
And it was crazy. And so when people realized that this could be done, they obviously took advantage of it. But the benefit of that is that that was a natural mechanism for actually stabilizing the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, over time it would stabilize, but wow, that's very strange because I mean that's how like people made money as traders with physical resources.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
thousands of years.
Yeah.
Is just like there's lots of it here. There's not much here. Like I didn't know that there was a point where cryptocurrency was sort of suffering from physical transport.
Well, it wasn't necessarily physical, but I mean, it did transfer between addresses, the one exchange address to another exchange address. It just happened to be worth more in another currency relative to the US.
Right. I mean, but you had said that there was a point where people had to physically meet in order to transfer.
Oh,
the
that.
currency.
Yes. Yeah.
I would expect that it would have been that much worse then. So we had gotten past it by this point, is what you're saying.
Yes. This is the point where it started to be not legitimized per se, but it started to be a functional means of trade.
Okay,
Because
so it was more so that the people who had managed to crack the exchange literacy barrier
Right.
were finding that they were able to traffic, if you will, Bitcoin from one like regional exchange to another regional exchange where the rate was higher.
Right.
Okay. So they weren't like literally having to like take a
No,
boat,
no.
literal like physical exchange.
They weren't hopping on a plane with their wallet and going there. No.
Yeah,
Nothing like that.
okay. My wheat joke is no longer as funny. If it was funny in the
I
first
still
place, but
appreciate it. Yeah.
so okay, I understand. I understand. So I mean, this very much comes into the fact that your experience with cryptocurrency started much earlier than mine. I'm not sure if you can tell from the way that we sound, but I'm considerably younger,
Oh, thanks.
and
by
got
the way.
into all of this considerably later. No shade, but but yeah. The so what year did you get involved in all of this?
So I started getting interested in Bitcoin and actually putting in like a little bit of money here and there in around 2015, I want to say.
Oh,
And
okay.
this was right after the crash of Mount Gox because the exchange itself, the centralized exchange, not the blockchain, the centralized exchange that people were holding their Bitcoin on wrongly got hacked, and a lot of their Bitcoin was stolen.
Unfortunate.
Yes, because again, if it's on a centralized exchange, you don't own it. It's in an account that's for you, but you do not have ownership of that coin if it's on a
It's your wallet that they own.
exactly. And
They're
so
just letting you use it.
yeah, so the price crashed quite a bit, and then it started doing a little bit of recovery. So I think I bought in my first Bitcoin around $60. And then oh, I made such a good profit. I sold it at $80, man. I was so happy at myself for that.
It's times like these, man. Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh boy, I was smart. I was with it. I was hip. I was a trader. So yeah, that wasn't great.
So sorry.
But over the years, I did store up a little bit, like 2 to 3, I wanna say, and probably around 2018. Oh, no, it was before 2018, 2015 or so, I think I s no, 20 when is it? 2017. It would have been 2017. We had to remodel our house, and I needed money, so I sold the Bitcoin I had in order to remodel our house, around 20K worth of it, and
That's much less bad than $80.
it is much less bad than $80, but it paid for the remodel, and our
It's
house
actually
was
gone below that since then too.
yeah, I had. It went down to 3,000, I believe, in 2018, 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it hit like 17 or 13 sometime since I got into it. It really crashed.
It does. It goes in a cycle. There's a definite cycle, or at least there has been until recently.
There will be a cycle until there is not.
Yeah, exactly. That's always the rule. So we were able to sell our house and made a decent profit. So technically, I think I had made more money using it for the improvements on the house, and that we used it to buy our new house, which is again grown in value. So I'd say either way, I'm kind of at a wash. So I think I did okay with that management of the Bitcoin, but I should have bought. I mean, obviously, I should have bought more. I wish I had
In
bought
hindsight,
more.
yes.
And then I remember one day I was at my previous job, and I had just I'm probably one of the first users of Coinbase. They just come out with their app. It was super cool, and it was really easy to start buying Bitcoin and whatnot. And then Ethereum got launched.
Right.
And I don't know if you were around for when that started. That was also around the 2017 timeframe. And
Yeah.
when it first came on board, you could buy an ETH for $14.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. And so I bought 22 ETH. I was like, "Oh, this will be great. This will be awesome."
He sold.
And I didn't sell. And I was like, "I'm gonna hold on to this. I'm gonna do good."
You learned your lesson from
And
Bitcoin.
I had learned my lesson. I was now a very well
lesson anyway.
I was a well-informed cryptocurrency guy at that point, right?
Mhm.
One would think. So there's this thing called airdrops. And you and I are familiar with airdrops. And what it means is basically if you were holding on to a currency and a project on that blockchain, in this case it was ETH, this one was Golem coin. If they were like a compute project. So you'd buy a certain amount of Golem coin, and that would give you a certain amount of compute on the network for whatever purposes you want to use it for.
That actually sounds shockingly like the token system that AI lets you.
Yeah,
There's like
absolutely.
X number of tokens for X amount of
Compute, yeah.
X amount of computational power for
Yep.
whatever prompts you want to use. Okay.
Yeah, and this will be important later, kiddies. So this Golem coin was launching, and so I was on, I think it was like the Telegram channel that was from their project.
Telegram.
And yeah,
That's-
well, no, I mean, it was still the legit channel of the program. And so they were getting ready to launch their coin. It was getting very, very close. And I'd been to the website several times. I'd checked it out. Everything looked good. And suddenly there was a message that was quote unquote from the moderators on the Telegram channel that said, okay, the airdrop is here. Go to the website and click on the link to sign your keys, and we will airdrop you your Golem coin allocation. And I went and I did that, and I looked at my wallet, and everything had been wiped out. Clean as a brand new wallet.
Deeply painful. And I mean, that would have been before the general policy of the moderators will never message you. That would have been like the impetus of that
Right.
kind of policy.
Exactly.
Because that's a very common policy now in any kind of almost any Discord server, not just like crypto related ones, just for security, that like moderators will not direct message you. You have to message them to ensure that you're not getting, scammed by some impersonator, because impersonation is a real problem.
Yeah.
With authority figures in online communities. For just this sort of reason.
Yeah.
And because this sort of stuff has been going on for a long time.
And the biggest lesson is not your keys, not your coin. Your private keys to your wallet are never to ever be shared. And if you can learn anything from me, please learn that, because the second you do, it's a wallet draining event, and it's not the blockchain being hacked. It's you being socially engineered to give away your security, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, luckily, things like that happened to unfortunate individuals like yourself enough times way back in the day that by the time I got around to the scene, which was post 2020, which is relatively recently, now that I think about it, oh my God, there were so many cases like that one that it was boilerplate, essentially, information. Every single YouTube video was like flashing red banners, like, if it's not in your wallet, then it's not your money. If it's keep your keys private, never ever tell anyone your keys. A common meme was not financial advice, but that's slightly different.
That's slightly different, but very valid.
Slightly different, but also funny. Not financial advice was the funniest thing. So when I got into crypto, the way that I learned was I didn't sign up for anything. I didn't get any currency. Instead, I just went on YouTube and I just went and found a bunch of channels that seemed relatively trustworthy, which is a bad way to go about finding information, by just being like, I like the cut of his jib. Like, that's not the way to do it, but that is what I did. And I would say I got pretty lucky in terms of finding sources of information, because there's some people you can really tell they're a bit of a con artist, and then there are others who seemed pretty dedicated to giving real information. And what I noticed is that all of the educational channels who were absolutely just bombarding you with that financial advice would always be like, this is only for entertainment purposes, and this is not financial advice, just as like a legal precaution to prevent people from being like, I lost all my money and it's your fault. Let's go to court,
Yeah, well, there was definitely the people, but the U.S. government has also been very litigious, rightfully or wrongfully, to seemingly random people and projects most of the time. The U.S.
They'll
government
just pick a victim. That's very IRS.
I mean, this goes back to, and the hilarious thing to me right now is that Gary Gensler is teaching a course on cryptocurrency. I think it's for like MIT or something like that. And I was floored when I read about this.
I was going to say, what?
I know exactly. What are you talking about? Because he has been the most damaging figure in a governmental position to cryptocurrency almost in the history of cryptocurrency. Like, his office at the
super
SEC.
duper against it.
Yeah.
Is he teaching like cryptocurrency and the dangers of flying too close to the sun, or like what's his?
I'd have to go in and look at it, but
I want to take this class.
I want to so I could yell profanities at him at this point because
I would be curious to audit it just to know like what does he have to say? Like what does he actually think? Because that's where you're going to find out what he
I
really thinks.
I don't think you'd really find out what he thinks. I think he's just there to collect a paycheck because what he did was crypto companies wanted to be legitimate. They wanted to be able to operate above board. They wanted to follow all the rules, and they
Right.
wanted clarity on what the rules are and what they
Yeah.
were. And not only did he refuse to give anyone clarity, any project that went to him and told him, as you're supposed to do disclosure, what you were planning to do, and they received no feedback, which was, I guess, in the way the legalese works is technically if they don't tell you it's okay, so then they go ahead and move forward with their plans, and then Gary would go and sue them, and that's how we had the whole XRP lawsuit that was for billions and
Yeah.
billions and billions of dollars and went on forever because he
There were a
refused.
couple of lawsuits to different chains,
Oh,
and
sure.
they all won. Like
Yeah, because
all the ones I was aware of,
he was such a corrupt individual in charge of things. It was, and then when it was in front of judges, they were like, "You did bad. This is wrong. These people,
yeah,
these people should be suing you."
right.
Yeah. So
I honestly I didn't follow it all that closely, and I mean I'm not the financial expert here. We took very different paths in our crypto journey,
sure,
to be sure. So you started out much earlier, and you were kind of like there on the ground in the Wild West, like
I was the hamster being experimented on and getting
yeah,
poked and prodded by needles.
have a much better grounding in like the history of how this actually all came up and how it actually works technologically. I don't. I learned most of what I know about scam safety and stuff like that from watching YouTube videos of gurus. And what I eventually came to was the realization that like the day trading life was a great way to give myself a heart attack, and that I didn't have the money, like, I didn't have the upfront capital to throw down on some sort of, like, long-term investment. So, the thing that I decided that I would get interested in instead was what I already knew some things about. And I realized, after a fashion that there were video games that were trying to integrate crypto in the form of NFTs. And I thought, okay, that's interesting because this is taking something that I'm trying to learn about and I'm trying to kind of get into and get some understanding of because I had seen that there were people making bank, shall we say,
Mhm.
on cryptocurrency. And I was like, well, I think any sane person would also like to make bank if possible, but I didn't want to like throw money down the drain and get punished as a fool as so many thousands of other people. So I didn't want to do that. And I thought, well, I do already know something about video games. So how about I stick with that? Because that's going to give me sort of a rocky crag to cling to if the weather gets rough. So I looked into some of the stuff with those and I thought, oh, well, here's some interesting use cases. And I came across some games where they were like using NFTs for their cards. And I thought, oh, well, that's actually a really interesting application. Like there's some real merit to the idea of because you have things like Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! That have been very successful and that have printed cards and gotten a lot of popularity and legitimacy. And then it wasn't until later and sort of dipping my toe in the water with those that I started to learn that, oh, well, as it turns out, it's not exactly the same. And check out some other examples of games and look at the ways that they've said, oh, well, we can just turn this thing that is just a regular game piece, we'll turn it into an NFT and make it sort of market tradable. And the ways that that changes the games. And so what I ended up learning about was less so the NFT market and the crypto and the way that games influence those things, but more so the interesting ways that real money trading and which I have some great stories about RMT. Not that I've myself participated in RMT, that's a breach of terms of service and I'm not into that. But I did learn some really interesting stuff about RMT because there's some overlap. There's some overlap in those communities, as it turns out. But I learned a lot about the way that real money interactions and crypto and NFTs, when they are applied to video games, how they affect video games
Hmm.
and video games economies and video game design and players' ability to have fun. And I learned a lot about that stuff. And so we met originally in a community for a crypto game project, and we've had a very sort of productive collaboration of our perspectives coming from the sort of different sides of things. Him being, I would say, a lot more knowledgeable in terms of the function and form of cryptocurrency and its uses, and be a lot more having had a lot more time to dedicate to understanding video games and game design and some of that stuff. So
Yeah,
but yeah, that's the origin story anyway.
yeah. Well, I mean, NFTs is something that blew up into a fad because people were like, "Oh, I have
got
this."
nuked from orbit.
Yeah, well,
My
yeah,
God.
because it started out, here's an 8-bit image collection made by this artist, and that's the other thing. NFTs were another venue that artists could fill a space in.
I
You
think
could,
NFTs actually suffer from something similar to what AI as a concept, machine learning is suffering from right now, which is that it's like that first contact issue. Somebody came up with the technology and the concept of an NFT, and they were like, "We'll slap a JPEG on that." And then everyone was like, "This is what an NFT is." And that's like all people have been willing to allow them to be for the most part, is like these random JPEGs that are like computer generated, modular, cobbled, generally really like vomitously bad art. And
but
then
that was the
you've
proof
got
of concept, though.
right, and that was the proof of concept. And in the same way, I look at like large language models and I'm like, this is obviously like the worst possible use case for machine learning. And everyone's like, this is what AI is. And it's like, no, please, God, no. It's like the worst version of itself, and everyone also hates it. So it's like, how about we forget that and we think a little outside of the box? Because I've seen some really creative use cases for NFTs since the Bored Apes era,
Right.
and some of these like generation one, like here's a stick figure, and then some of them have different hats, and you can get your unique stick figure with a different hat, and someone else will probably want that because it's a collector's item. And it's like, yeah, but why? Why is it a collector's item? Why do we care? Like, it doesn't do anything. And since then, people have come up with like ways to make it so that some of them actually do stuff. I still think that there's probably some potential in the in like the TCG realm for NFTs. I think that the real
You
reason
might have
that
to explain TCG.
TCG, trading card games. So like back to Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh, although people usually abbreviate, well, yeah, those are TCGs. Trading card games. CCG, or collectible card game, is the abbreviation for things like Hearthstone, is probably the most well-known example, which is where you can't trade those between yourself and other players. You just gather them by giving Blizzard money, usually, and then you can fill out your collection. Now, they're the most popular one that I'm aware of, and I'm not trying to give anyone press, and I'm not trying to like we're not sponsored. It's like Gods Unchained is sort of the one that was a big name back in the day, and it's still like kind of the grandfather of NFT card games.
But oh,
But
how has it fallen?
but my God, has it fallen on hard times. And the reason for that, in my mind, is because of, well, kind of the same thing that made me give up playing Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra, which is Riot's version of Hearthstone, which is admittedly a really good game. They just stopped putting money into it because it didn't make any money, because it was one of the best free-to-play experiences for a card game that I've ever encountered. Anyway, done with my Riot plug, also not sponsored. But like, yeah, not financial advice, obviously. It was free, though. The best price. Not financial advice. But like, Gods Unchained's problem was that they got into this obsessive cycle of constantly releasing new content. And the problem with that in my mind. And like it was one thing where with Legends of Runeterra they were releasing a new expansion every roughly 3 months, and in order to gain cards in those expansions, you'd have to play the game a lot to unlock them in the free to play experience, or you could just pay money like a normal person, and then you could get them all, and you could always be up to date. But the problem in my head with that was that as they did that, they did this like standard league model, right? Which a lot of these games will do, which is like only the last three expansions are allowed, which means that every expansion, they do a lot of reprints of identical cards or similar cards that are just sort of like basic to the game's function. And then, so you're farming or you're buying a lot of cards that you already have, technically. So like why? So then either you're doing that or you are operating with like a base set, which is what Gods Unchained was doing. They had a base set and then you had like expansion additionals from the expansions that were legal during a given league or whatever. But if it was changing every 3 months, it meant that you had to buy or farm for new cards to be able to be viable. So what was really irritating is that you would maybe spend a lot of money or play a lot and sort of grind the ladder to gain cards to become viable as a player and be able to compete in the ladder for prizes and stuff. And then the next expansion would come out and you were irrelevant again and you'd have to spend money all over again, or you'd have to start over from zero, and other people would not have to do that or would have the money to. And usually what was frustrating is that the people who were playing were just sponsored by huge organizations that were committed to them always being at the top of the ladder, so they would have everything that they needed because they were good players, where somebody like me who was just kind of like, I'm pretty good at card games and I don't have any money to throw at this, but this is kind of fun. I get left in the dust. Like, I think I was pretty consistently able to hit like the sort of the equivalent of like a challenger tier in some of these card games. Not Hearthstone, though. I was never that good at Hearthstone. Hearthstone was way too expensive. But I was able to be very successful in some of these games. And then I just got like drowned out by the sheer volume of new cards that I just couldn't get access to. So as like a free to play player, I felt anyway that no amount of skill was enough to make up for not having a large amount of like startup capital. And I think that really it poisoned me against the experience. And it turns out it poisoned everyone else too, because the game died.
Right.
Like
Well,
it's still alive technically, but like almost no one plays it. And the reason it still exists is because it's like it's IMX's baby, and IMX has a lot of other successful projects on their chain. So it's being nursed along by other projects. It's not actually doing anything itself.
right. And I think the great thing about your experience is that you came into the world of crypto as you were seeing it being integrated into this other industry that you're already familiar with, which was the gaming industry. And you've seen mostly the failures, but some of the successes, and a lot of those depend on the vision and the capabilities of the teams that are involved in those projects. And it kind of shows in this one crypto being integrated into the gaming industry through NFTs or through their own blockchains or integrations into certain blockchains. But that's just one of the industries that crypto is going to be going into. And the thing I want to impress upon people is that you can't think of it so much as a investment opportunity and something to make you money, and something that you're going to be using every day on the front end. You have to think of it as a back end technology, an infrastructure technology that is running the world as we know it, because the current infrastructure technologies that are running the banking system, the internet, let's say the real estate companies, contracts, all those types of things, they're all of these different unconnected and proprietary infrastructure mechanisms that don't talk to each other, that aren't capable of being accessed by the common person, and are not they're very expensive to maintain, and it's just this jumble of wires. Like if you were to go into a data center that was made by somebody who's never made a data center before, and you see all these wires crisscrossing all over the place, and somehow the whole center is running, but there's no way to figure it out. And then this new technology comes along, and suddenly all of the cables are tied up perfectly, and they're connected to every single place they need to be, and they're clearly labeled, and you can find where everything goes, and it's very logical, and it makes sense. And so that's what the technology offers. And
Right.
I think that that's the beginning of what people need to start understanding on their journey to cryptocurrency, is that this is a baby technology. And even how many years? It's almost 20 years, coming up on 20 years after the first inception of it. It is still a baby technology that we're trying to learn to use in the best possible way. And there are growing pains, and it has been brutal on some people and has been amazing for others. And it's just a work in progress, but the payoff at the end, I think, is going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something interesting what you were explaining that
While I was monologuing.
while you were monologuing, yes. And now I will wrest the subject back to the thing that I understand to say that, what I've learned to be one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons why you have never seen a successful crypto or NFT based video game. And it's because the people who chose to make NFT video games or crypto based video games are crypto technology guys.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
let's think about the overlap here, okay? The people who are interested in something like crypto are probably people who are spending a lot of time online and probably people who also really enjoy video games. So
Right.
they would have this through line in their brain like, "Oh, I could move one thing that I understand really well and apply it to something that I really enjoy. This would be cool." But the problem is that a crypto guy is not a game designer.
Right.
And similarly, a game designer is not a crypto guy.
Mhm.
And there are very few, if not zero, people out there who really, really understand both. Okay.
Mhm.
I do not personally possess the skills to build a video game by myself. I possess the ability to maybe learn how to do it, but there are a lot of things that I don't understand. I do understand plenty of things, more maybe than most people, but I'm not a programmer. I am not really proficient with any game engines or anything like that. So I think that the issue was that you had a bunch of crypto bros, if you will, going and trying their hand at game design, and those all failed because they couldn't make a game that wasn't bad.
Right.
And then similarly, you had some that took another approach, which was to hire real game designers to make a good game. And some of those are actually out there, and they're more successful, but still not successful. I can think of some examples right off the top of my head. I shouldn't name names, and so I won't,
Yep.
who have made beautiful games that look incredible, play smoothly, all of the technology is there, but they don't really know anything about people's attitude towards money.
Mhm.
So they've really struggled to find a way to kind of connect those hoses. So they have a good, like a cool game that's like not finished, but is a great idea. And they're really stumbling and tripping over their shoelaces trying to figure out how to marry crypto with video game because they don't understand crypto very well, even if they do understand video game. And so what ends up happening is they end up hamstringing their video game, trying to jam the square peg into a round hole. And I look at some of these projects and I sit there and I'm just like, oh my God, it's so painful to watch because this is something that I've seen now enough times that I can tell you exactly what they're doing wrong. No one wants to listen to me, by the way. but
Well,
but
let's
I
see, they're
see it
listening to
happen
you
quite
now
quite
because
often.
I'm declaring you an expert in that field,
Yep.
and
Yeah, I being
I have
declared an
the
expert
authority
in the
to.
field. I've seen this in a handful of different examples, and it is pretty it's pretty sad to watch. And I know some people who work in some of these projects who are also kind of aware of the issue. And can't fix it as an individual because they work in a larger machine that doesn't operate in a way that allows them to apply those fixes. And I think a big part of it is that many of these crypto projects have such power invested in the investors. The investors who are relying on the technology application to make them money are being, I expect, because nothing moves. Like, you have people making really sound development calls for how to make these things function correctly, and I've never seen any of these good ideas implemented or tested in any way. It's always just like the tried and true formulaic things, and then we'll just try and jam a crypto into it. And it never works, man. It never works.
Yeah, it's going to take people from both groups being managed by somebody who has a very solid vision on a project where they know what the outcome is going to be. And that's ultimately what makes a successful venture. I mean, previously it would just be like, say, Satoshi for Bitcoin. He had a
Mhm.
perfectly clear vision, and people came together to make that happen because it was an open source project and anybody could join. But then he took off and it became a community owned run project. Or if you look at Ethereum, one could argue it's a centralized or a more centralized, controlled blockchain because Vitalik was the guy who came up with it, former editor of Bitcoin Magazine, and he had this idea, and he has been pushing forward with the updates and encouraging, convincing the community to go along with him as it is necessary. But he's like the primary driving force behind that because he has the vision. And look at what Ethereum has become, this amazing project. But when you have these two completely disjointed, some other industries, making the two come together is necessary because one industry cannot do what the other industry does without their knowledge. And so that's really what is happening right now. We are
I
seeing
think
this changeover of the old guard of the financial systems now are starting to say, okay, this is how it's been working before, and we see your technology as beneficial. And so we will together be able to integrate it into something that will ideally make things more better.
right. I mean, I think that it's going to be a survival of the fittest situation that's going to give us the best products and I mean, that goes for the chains and the coins themselves, but as well as their applications, be that video games, as well as 100 other applications that you could apply cryptocurrency to, and like blockchain technology. It's going to come down to people trying stuff and failing until something sticks. And with video games, my observation has just been that people stopped trying for now because no one found anything that sticks. And there was enough user backlash from the number of things that didn't stick and the number of scams that were out there that investors have gotten cold feet for now. If somebody ever figures anything out that works, suddenly everyone's going to be like, "Oh my God, we're going to all do that now." And then you'll have another round of iteration, and then you'll come up with the best possible version of that thing that actually works. And the same thing has gone for the coins, where it's like, yeah, no one has come up with anything that's really genuinely better than Ethereum yet. Although they've tried, and there are better technologies, but they haven't really managed to overtake it.
Market cap, yeah. Ethereum's
Right.
market cap is massive, yeah.
It's been too stable and too reliable to come up with a good reason to abandon ship and go to something else. And I mean, I'm curious to see what, if anything, we'll get out of the technology going forward, or if we're all gonna suddenly realize, oh, there's something else that we could do instead, and we'll just do that and abandon this technology. Like, I can't rightly think of anything that would do that, but then again, I didn't invent this technology, so I can't say anything.
Right. Yeah, well, I hope that this gives the people listening an idea of what benefit and what lessons you can learn from our personal experiences and what you stand to learn in going through and actually taking the cryptocurrency course, and just understanding the history behind currency, how it's been used, how it's been manipulated, and what cryptocurrency is, what it can do, and where it's going in the future.
I would love to take some time for one of these episodes if you're game for this, just to talk about the different forms that currency has taken over the years. I think that could be a very fun discussion.
It is
'Cause
very entertaining.
Again, coming from where I'm coming from, there's a lot of really interesting like variations on currency that I've seen in video games over the years, and some ones that I'm aware of in history that I'm sure would be fun to talk about. So
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll cover that in the next one. But for now, I definitely want to say thank you so much, Nigel, for taking the time. You're somebody whose opinion I greatly respect, and who it's been really a pleasure to travel along in this journey together, especially in this topic. And everybody listening along will hear more from you very soon.
all right, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for having me, and see you all next time. I'm sure I'll be back.